This video is owned and produced by Hello Kinetic, a channel to practice listening and reading English every day. Learn English through real books. Expand your vocabulary and be good at English. The Slithering Shadow. Chapter 4. Straining vainly at the silk cords which cut into her wrists, Natala sought to pierce the darkness beyond the radiant circle. Her tongue seemed frozen to the roof of her mouth. Into that blackness she had seen Conan vanish, locked in mortal combat with the unknown demon, and the only sounds that had come to her straining ears had been the panting gasps of the barbarian, the impact of struggling bodies, and the thud and rip of savage blows. These ceased, and Natala swayed dizzily on her cords, half fainting. A footstep roused her out of her apathy of horror, to see Conan emerging from the darkness. At the sight she found her voice in a shriek which echoed down the vaulted tunnel. The man handling the Cimmerian had received was appalling to behold. At every step he dripped blood. His face was skinned and bruised as if he had been beaten with a bludgeon. His lips were pulped, and blood oozed down his face from a wound in his scalp. There were deep gashes in his thighs, calves and forearms, and great bruises showed on his limbs and body from impacts against the stone floor. But his shoulders, back and upper breast muscles had suffered most. The flesh was bruised, swollen and lacerated, the skin hanging in loose strips, as if he had been lashed with wire whips. "Oh, Conan," she sobbed. "What has happened to you?" He had no breath for conversation, but his smashed lips writhed in what might have been grim humor as he approached her. His hairy breast, glistening with sweat and blood, heaved with his panting. Slowly and laboriously he reached up and cut her cords, then fell back against the wall and leaned there, his trembling legs braced wide. She scrambled up from where she had fallen and caught him in a frenzied embrace, sobbing hysterically. "Oh, Conan, you are wounded unto death. Oh, what shall we do?" "Well," he panted, "you can't fight a devil out of hell and come off with a whole skin." "Where is it?" she whispered. "Did you kill it?" "I don't know. It fell into a pit. It was hanging in bloody shreds, but whether it can be killed by steel I know not." "Oh, your poor back," she wailed, wringing her hands. "It lashed me with a tentacle," he grimaced, swearing as he moved. "It cut like wire and burned like poison. But it was its damnable squeezing that got my wind. It was worse than a python. If half my guts are not mashed out of place, I'm much mistaken." "What shall we do?" she whimpered. He glanced up. The trap was closed. No sound came from above. "We can't go back through the secret door," he muttered. "That room is full of dead men, and doubtless warriors keep watch there. They must have thought my doom sealed when I plunged through the floor above, or else they dare not follow me into this tunnel. Twist that radium gem off the wall." As I groped my way back up the corridor I felt arches opening into other tunnels. "We'll follow the first we come to. It may lead to another pit, or to the open air. We must chance it. We can't stay here and rot." Natala obeyed, and holding the tiny point of light in his left hand and his bloody saber in his right, Conan started down the corridor. He went slowly, stiffly, only his animal vitality keeping him on his feet. There was a blank glare in his bloodshot eyes, and Natala saw him involuntarily lick his battered lips from time to time. She knew his suffering was ghastly, but with the stoicism of the wilds he made no complaint. Presently the dim light shone on a black arch, and into this Conan turned. Natala cringed at what she might see, but the light revealed only a tunnel similar to that they had just left. How far they went she had no idea, before they mounted a long stair and came upon a stone door, fastened with a golden bolt. She hesitated, glancing at Conan. The barbarian was swaying on his feet, the light in his unsteady hand flinging fantastic shadows back and forth along the wall. "Open the door, girl," he muttered thickly. "The men of Zuthal will be waiting for us, and I would not disappoint them. By Crom, the city has not seen such a sacrifice as I will make." She knew he was half delirious. No sound came from beyond the door. Taking the radium gem from his blood-stained hand, she threw the bolt and drew the panel inward. The inner side of a cloth of gold tapestry met her gaze and she drew it aside and peeked through, her heart in her mouth. She was looking into an empty chamber in the center of which a silvery fountain tinkled. Conan's hand fell heavily on her naked shoulder. "Stand aside, girl," he mumbled. "Now is the feasting of swords." "There is no one in the chamber," she answered. "But there is water." "I hear it," he licked his blackened lips. "We will drink before we die." He seemed blinded. She took his darkly stained hand and led him through the stone door. She went on tiptoe, expecting a rush of yellow figures through the arches at any instant. "Drink while I keep watch," he muttered. "No, I am not thirsty. Lie down beside the fountain and I will bathe your wounds." "What of the swords of Zuthal?" He continually raked his arm across his eyes as if to clear his blurred sight. "I hear no one. All is silent." He sank down gropingly and plunged his face into the crystal jet, drinking as if he could not get enough. When he raised his head there was sanity in his bloodshot eyes and he stretched his massive limbs out on the marble floor as she requested, though he kept his saber in his hand, and his eyes continually roved toward the archways. She bathed his torn flesh and bandaged the deeper wounds with strips torn from a silk hanging. She shuddered at the appearance of his back. The flesh was discolored, mottled and spotted black and blue and a sickly yellow, where it was not raw. As she worked she sought frantically for a solution to their problem. If they stayed where they were, they would eventually be discovered. Whether the men of Zuthal were searching the palaces for them, or had returned to their dreams, she could not know. As she finished her task, she froze. Under the hanging that partly concealed an alcove, she saw a hand's breadth of yellow flesh. Saying nothing to Conan, she rose and crossed the chamber softly, grasping his poniard. Her heart pounded suffocatingly as she cautiously drew aside the hanging. On the dais lay a young yellow woman, naked and apparently lifeless. At her hand stood a jade jar nearly full of peculiar golden-colored liquid. Natala believed it to be the elixir described by Thalos, which lent vigor and vitality to the degenerate Zuthal. She leaned across the supine form and grasped the vessel, her poniard poised over the girl's bosom. The latter did not wake. With the jar in her possession, Natala hesitated, realizing it would be the safer course to put the sleeping girl beyond the power of waking and raising an alarm. But she could not bring herself to plunge the Cimmerian poniard into that still bosom, and at last she drew back the hanging and returned to Conan, who lay where she had left him, seemingly only partly conscious. She bent and placed the jar to his lips. He drank, mechanically at first, then with a suddenly roused interest. To her amazement he sat up and took the vessel from her hands. When he lifted his face, his eyes were clear anti-normal. Much of the drawn haggard look had gone from his features, and his voice was not the mumble of delirium. "Crom. Where did you get this?" She pointed. "From that alcove, where a yellow hussy is sleeping." He thrust his muzzle again into the golden liquid. "By Crom," he said with a deep sigh, "I feel new life and power rush like wildfire through my veins. Surely this is the very elixir of life." "We had best go back into the corridor," Natala ventured nervously. "We shall be discovered if we stay here long. We can hide there until your wounds heal." "Not I," he grunted. "We are not rats, to hide in dark burrows. We leave this devil city now, and let none seek to stop us." "But your wounds," she wailed. "I do not feel them," he answered. "It may be a false strength this liquor has given me, but I swear I am aware of neither pain nor weakness." With sudden purpose he crossed the chamber to a window she had not noticed. Over his shoulder she looked out. A cool breeze tossed her tousled locks. Above was the dark velvet sky, clustered with stars. Below them stretched a vague expanse of sand. "Thalos said the city was one great palace," said Conan. "Evidently some of the chambers are built like towers on the wall. This one is. Chance has led us well." "What do you mean?" she asked, glancing apprehensively over her shoulder. "There is a crystal jar on that ivory table," he answered. "Fill it with water and tie a strip of that torn hanging about its neck for a handle while I rip up this tapestry." She obeyed without question, and when she turned from her task she saw Conan rapidly tying together the long tough strips of silk to make a rope, one end of which he fastened to the leg of the massive ivory table. "We'll take our chance with the desert," said he. "Thalos spoke of an oasis a day's march to the south, and grasslands beyond that. If we reach the oasis we can rest until my wounds heal. This wine is like sorcery. A little while ago I was little more than a dead man, now I am ready for anything. Here is enough silk left for you to make a garment of." Natala had forgotten her nudity. The mere fact caused her no qualms, but her delicate skin would need protection from the desert sun. As she knotted the silk length about her supple body, Conan turned to the window and with a contemptuous wrench tore away the soft gold bars that guarded it. Then, looping the loose end of his silk rope about Natala's hips, and cautioning her to hold on with both hands, he lifted her through the window and lowered her the 30-odd feet to the earth. She stepped out of the loop, and drawing it back up, he made fast the vessels of water and wine, and lowered them to her. He followed them, sliding down swiftly, hand over hand. As he reached her side, Natala gave a sigh of relief. They stood alone at the foot of the great wall, the paling stars overhead and the naked desert about them. What perils yet confronted them she could not know, but her heart sang with joy because they were out of that ghostly, unreal city. They may find the rope, grunted Conan, slinging the precious jars across his shoulders, wincing at the contact with his mangled flesh. They may even pursue us, but from what Thalos said, I doubt it. That way is south. A bronze muscular arm indicated their course, so somewhere in that direction lies the oasis. Come. Taking her hand with a thoughtfulness unusual for him, Conan strode out across the sands, suiting his stride to the shorter legs of his companion. He did not glance back at the silent city, brooding dreamily and ghostily behind them. Conan, Natala ventured finally, when you fought the monster, and later, as you came up the corridor, did you see anything of Thalos? He shook his head. It was dark in the corridor, but it was empty. She shuddered. She tortured me, yet I pity her. It was a hot welcome we got in that accursed city, he snarled. Then his grim humor returned. Well, they'll remember our visit long enough, I'll wager. There are brains and guts and blood to be cleaned off the marble tiles, and if their god still lives, he carries more wounds than I. We got off light, after all. We have wine and water and a good chance of reaching a habitable country, though I look as if I've gone through a meat grinder, and you have a sore. It's all your fault, she interrupted. If you had not looked so long and admiringly at that Stygian cat. Crom and his devils. He swore. When the oceans drown the world, women will take time for jealousy. Devil take their conceit. Did I tell the Stygian to fall in love with me? After all, she was only human.